Good evening. This is Meditated 8, and this is our weekly Big Book Club. Amy is going to open the meeting in a second. My name's Jill. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. Oh, I like the way you've done that, Amy. Cool. You're getting very high tech. So the set-aside prayer is taken from different lines in the Big Book that deal with prejudice. And so basically we start our meeting with this because it's asking us to put aside everything we think we know and come in here with a fresh mind and to be teachable. You can read along with Amy, and with that, we're going to start the meeting.
Yes, thank you. Welcome to our line-by-line reading of the Big Book as part of the Meditated 8 group. If we can just take a moment of silence together to think about the alcoholic who is still struggling inside and outside of the rooms, followed by the set-aside prayer. Thank you. Dear God, please help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, my disease, the Big Book, and the 12 steps. Everything I think I know about the program, the fellowship, all spiritual terms, and especially about you, God. So I may have an open mind and a new experience with all of these. Please help me see the truth. Amen.
Okay, so just to recap, we have just finished talking about the jaywalker. And when Bill wrote the jaywalker, he used an example of something that was extreme, that nobody in their right mind would do, which is be hooked on going into being hit by traffic because you're cutting across where there's no crosswalks. And you do it over and over and over again to the point that you're losing limbs and all the rest of it. And then the whole idea was, if you switch jaywalking with drinking when you know you're an alcoholic, or using if you're an addict, the insanity of the behavior is exactly the same. We know it's going to kill us, but we keep doing it. So we're going to start. Amy, you can organize the reading now after we just talked about that. So this is the paragraph just after reading that. And it starts, you may think our illustration is too ridiculous. We're just going to read this next paragraph. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Who?
Okay. I was asking if Martha wanted to read because I can see she has her book, but I know she can't always speak, so I want to make sure I'm not overstepping.
I forgot to clock out. I can read.
Yeah, would you like to stop?
Okay, my name's Martha and I'm an alcoholic. You may think our illustration is too ridiculous, but is it? We who have been through the ringer have to admit, if we substituted alcoholism for jaywalking, the illustration would fit us exactly. However intelligent we may have been in other respects, where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. It's strong language, but isn't it true?
So I've highlighted the sentence starting, however, right to the end of that paragraph, because however intelligent we may have been in other respects, generally speaking, alcoholics are smarter than the average bear. But ironically, at the same time, it's our best thinking that gets us into the jam we got ourselves into. So self-knowledge avails us nothing. We can read every book about alcoholism, addiction, every scientific journal, and fill our head with book knowledge, but that isn't necessarily going to help us be in the solution for dealing with it. And then, so I've highlighted that right to the end. Strong language. The strong language, circle, strangely insane. And when we were discussing this last week, we pulled up the definitions in the Big Book Dictionary, which you can download free. It's a PDF. And see how many times the word insane appears. We don't think rationally. Insane means Something is taking over our brain. And that is basically alcohol or substances. It's our higher power. So what we're trying to do here is get ourselves to a position where we're sane. It's that simple. Okay, next paragraph. Or this is also, by the way, step one, we're powerless. We're powerless. It takes us over. We take the drink and the drink takes us. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, Martha, you want to do another paragraph?
Some of you are thinking, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. We admit we have some of these symptoms, but we have gone to the but we have not gone to the extremes you fellows did, nor are we likely to, for we understand ourselves so well after what you have told us that such things cannot happen again. We have not lost everything in life through drinking, and we certainly do not intend to. Thanks for the information.
Okay, so this is the chronically unique paragraph. In other words, I think I'm the exception to the rule. All of you are sick, but you know, I'm special. It's not going to happen to me. And I have written next to this, yeah, but, because that was my nickname. When I joined the Bronx and I was challenging those poor people on every paragraph they read, and because it was like, that's where I was. Like, I wasn't teachable. I was not willing to accept that I was a drunk like the rest of you, you know, and that I just came in here to manage my drinking, you know, so that I could go back out and do what I wanted to do again. So I've written here, yeah, but. And I have to say, after 2.5 years, I've dropped the but. Now I go, yeah, 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 that applies. So what I've underlined here is, yes, what you tell us is true, but it doesn't fully apply. Okay, so we've given some illustrations here, but when you're hearing a share, I'm hearing a lead. I used to go, well, that doesn't apply to me. He's East Indian. That doesn't apply to me. She's 25. What does she know? That doesn't apply to me because, oh, well, they haven't suffered what I've suffered. In other words, I was looking for the differences. And what we advise you to do in here is, you can't give an illustration for every alcoholic exactly as we are in this room. We're as diverse as we are individual human beings. But the point is that if we look for the similarities and again become teachable, geez, they sound just like me. They're brain loops. They fixate on that drink. There's a mental obsession going on here. There's a craving that starts. Gee, you know, and I start to see the similarities. And it may not be every single thing that is exactly the same. But the reason Alcoholics Anonymous worked for me is because I saw all these people that were pretty much telling different parts of my story recover and have great lives. I have a great life today. You can have my life. All you have to do is what I do. This is a message of hope. Okay, there's some work to be done, but the bottom line is that if you come in here and you do what we've done, you can have what we have. But you have to be willing to do the work. I wasn't. I was fundamentally unique. And for decades, I went back out and relapsed and relapsed and relapsed. And the one thing I can tell you for sure is it's a progressive disease. Every time I came back, I was sicker. And every time I went back, I picked up exactly where I left off and then took it to a whole new level. So the other thing that I've put at the end of that paragraph, and we're now on the top of page 39, I've written in big letters, hasn't happened yet. You may not have lost your home yet. You may not have lost all your relationships yet. You may not be living in your car yet. You may not, I mean, you see where I'm going with this? It's like your rock bottom is when you decide to stop digging. I didn't lose everything. I run 3 home-based businesses. Thank God I've got a lot of people who had my back and carried things on while I was so sick. But your bottom is when you decide to stop drinking and using. And at the end of the day, we don't know how far down we can go, but why find out? Okay, next paragraph, please.
Okay, Ron, would you like to share? Would you like to read the next paragraph, top of 39? That may be true.
I can do that.
Thanks,
I'm,
Ron.
I am an alcoholic. That may be true of certain non-alcoholic people who, though drinking fearlessly and heavily at the present time, are able to stop or moderate because their brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. But the actual or potential alcoholic, with hardly an exception, will be absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. This is a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize to smash home upon our alcoholic readers as it has been revealed to us out of bitter experience. Let us take another illustration.
Okay, so this is the transitional paragraph that sums up the previous examples and then takes us to Fred the accountant. So what they're saying here is that it's a progressive disease, as I was just saying, and your brains and bodies have not been damaged as ours were. Okay, I'm going through damage I've caused in my own health. You know, part of this may be something unrelated, but I know for a fact that some of the health consequences I'm dealing with now are the results of years of alcohol and opiate abuse. You know, I've got brain scans that are proving these things. So this is going to be very interesting. We know our impulse control of our cerebral cortex is damaged beyond repair at a certain point if we drink and use long enough. So I will get the test results and prove to you when I've got them that that has in fact happened. So what I come in here to do is learn a new way to control my impulses by learning a program for living that means I never want to go there in the first place. So we all know, or if you're new to this and you may not know, that whenever there's a sentence in the big book that is in italics, you need to perk your ears up and take a little special notice. Because in the time when this book was printed in 1939, they still had wooden blocks and printing presses and had to individually change all the fonts in the printer. So it was very expensive to put something in italics. And the reason that they're doing it is pay attention. So I've highlighted this sentence: absolutely unable to stop drinking on the basis of self-knowledge. And what is that? It's a definition of powerlessness. So I've written that in the margin, powerlessness. And then I've written self-knowledge does not equal sobriety. And as I was saying, I can intellectualize what's going on with me, what my disease is, what my problems are, until the cows come home. But it needed to move from my head to my heart and actually become a part of my way of living that involved a spiritual factor. And that's where we get in. We call it higher power. You can call it God if you want. Don't get hung up on the term. It's just the idea that there's a power greater than Jill. There's a power greater than each of us. We just open our mind to that idea. That's where we're getting into. And now we're moving into the story of one of my favorite stories, who's the average guy, Fred the accountant. Okay, let's go back to reading.
Fred is partner in a well-known accounting firm. His income is good. He has a fine house. He has a fine home. He is happily married and the father of promising children of college age. He has so attractive a personality that he makes friends with everyone. If ever there was a successful businessman, it is Fred. To all appearance, he is a stable, well-balanced individual. Yet, he is an alcoholic. We first saw Fred about a year ago in a hospital where he had gone to recover from a bad case of jitters. It was his first experience of this kind, and he was much ashamed of it. Far from admitting he was an alcoholic, he told himself he came to the hospital to rest his nerves. The doctor intimated strongly that he might be worse than he realized. For a few days, he was depressed about his condition. He made up his mind to quit drinking altogether. It never occurred to him that perhaps he could not do so. In spite of his character and standing, Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept a spiritual remedy for his problem. We told him what we knew about alcoholism. He was interested and conceded that he might have had some of the symptoms, but he was a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. He was positive that this humiliating experience, plus the knowledge he had acquired, would keep him sober the rest of his life. Self-knowledge would fix it.
Yeah, not gonna happen. So let's break this down. Fred is actually Harry. And Fred is the illustration. Fred didn't make it, by the way. He's the guy that has, on all appearances, still leading a normal life, just like me. If you, in my drinking, when I was on a mission, or a job, or I was a lawyer at one time. I didn't drink or use. I was absolutely focused on getting the job done to the best of my ability. And it wasn't until it ended that I'd then just go off the rails, and then I'd get sick because I just overdid it. But then I'd have another mission to accomplish, and I would go. And I led most of my 20s and 30s like that. And Fred did too, and he had an attractive, personality, well balanced. Yet he is alcoholic. Now, how can that be if he's still functioning? Again, there's as many descriptions of the alcoholic as there are individual people. What we're asking here is why he's going in. I had to laugh at this. Okay, jitters. Jitters is like having the shakes, or the DTs, when you're starting to feel like you're really badly hungover, dehydrated, all those sorts of things. So he's got jitters. And then he's coming around saying, well, I need to go to hospital. So in those days, the sanitariums were like rehab centers to rest my nerves. Or you'd go to the sanitarium in Switzerland for a spa treatment, right? The doctor's telling him here he might be worse than he realized. If you're ever honest with a doctor. In my case, I've had more amends recently with doctors because I never told them the truth. And, they never looked for it because I didn't appear initially like I was alcoholic. Then it says that I've highlighted the paragraph or the sentence at the bottom that begins, it never occurred to him that perhaps, and here's the highlight, he could not do so in spite of his character and standing. Okay, what does that mean? He's absolutely powerless. He thinks he can think his way through that. He's still in self-will. Fred would not believe himself an alcoholic, much less accept, now circle this, spiritual remedy. Spiritual remedy. So this is where we're saying, okay, guys, self-knowledge isn't enough here. We know we've got issues. We know our thinking isn't like other people's. But this is where we start to get an inkling of what our solution could be. Spiritual remedy. But first, before you can have a spiritual remedy, I have to do step one. I have to acknowledge and admit and accept that I have a problem that I just can't think my way out of. That self-will avails us nothing. So I need to get into the solution. He could not do so in spite of his character and standing. What the heck's his character and standing? That's just denial. Hiding behind cloaks and images, right? I know people that have owned multinational corporations that have died that are hopeless alcoholics, as well as people who've been living in their cars. It doesn't matter what race, gender, or religion. Alcoholism isn't fussy. It just wants you dead. And it just wants to keep convincing that you should have it in your life. So then flipping on over to 40, you have to laugh, okay? First full sentence, he was interested and he conceded. What is a concession? Is, okay, I'll give you that one. And he's still, right now, he's in denial. You can hear it here. And you'll hear this from sponsees. Well, I've got some of those symptoms, but I'm not nearly as bad as the other people. You know, I've still got a job, or people are still talking to me. And again, we go back to the yet. All right. So he's a long way from admitting that he could do nothing about it himself. What is that? Write it in the margin. Self-will. Self-will. He's not done step one. Okay? And then he said he was positive that this humiliating experience, what is that? Circle it. That's unmanageability. Again, the other part of step one. And the unmanageability is directly being caused by his drinking, or in my case, drinking and using prescription medication not as prescribed. It doesn't matter whether it's legal or not, it's why am I using it? If my motivation for taking any substance, legal or not, is to not feel, only you can answer that question for yourself. And then there's that beautiful, beautiful sentence that ends this paragraph. Highlight it, underline it. I got stars all around it. Self-knowledge would fix it. And then I've written next to it, this is the delusion that never works. Okay. So all sorts of step one stuff in there. Let's carry on, Amy, with the next paragraph we heard.
Sure. Melissa, do you have a book? Would you want to read? Or I can't tell you look like you're out and about.
Yeah, no, I don't have a book. I just forgot about the meeting and then I remembered with my reminder on my phone. So I just found a quiet spot downtown Vancouver and I'm listening. So we'll have to go to somebody
Well,
else.
welcome, welcome. Alicia, you look like you have your book right there. Do you want to read?
Yeah, I've got my book. I have COVID, so I don't know how good this is going to go, but I don't mind reading. Okay, so which paragraph are we on here?
Page 40, we heard no more. Very, very first paragraph, like real paragraph.
Oh, okay. We heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told that he was back in the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. The story he told is most instructive, for here was a chap absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited blended judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back nevertheless.
Okay, so this is, I'm sure, if you stop and think about it, if you've ever relapsed or you've ever decided you're not going to drink again and have, and I'm sure for me, I don't know how many times I did that. Again, I'm thinking I can get away with it, but here's what's happening now. This time he says he's quite shaky, and then he says he's convinced he had to stop drinking. So I've underlined that. So he's moved on a little bit, right? He's now admitting he's powerless. So he's going through the step one experience right now. He's absolutely convinced he had to stop drinking. He had no excuse for drinking. He says he's got excellent judgment and determination and everything else. Yet guess what? Here he is, flat on his back in the sanitarium, admitted one again. So what is that telling us? Step one, that I'm powerless over alcohol. And it doesn't say, and my life is unmanageable in step one. There's a dash. And basically, if you aren't familiar with the 12 steps, if you go, I invite you to turn to page 59 and put a sticker on that page, because there they are. And so I have to refer back to that regularly. And it says, we admitted, it's a we program, we're all in this together. I'm looking at step one now on page 59. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, dash, that our lives had become unmanageable. The reason for the dash is we connect the unmanageability of our life with our drinking and using. It's not that, oh dear, there's a lot of inflation, or woe is me, this has happened, my parents are being beastly to me, my partner's being beastly to me, my employer's being beastly to me. There's no excuses here. It's like, let's be honest. The mess I got myself into was my own making. It wasn't because I'm a bad person, but I have the disease of alcoholism. And once I get that idea in my brain and the obsessive thinking starts, it's only a matter of time before I'm going to act on it. And I'm going to be right back where I started. And I'm the sort of drinker that, okay, I didn't know what corks were for. Like, I just couldn't figure out why anybody wouldn't drink to the bottom of the bottle. And I certainly couldn't understand people in restaurants that left glasses of booze half full on the table. For me, it was drinking to the point, or using to the point of not feeling. And that's where this took me. It was progressive. And even if I went out one night and didn't, and I was able to stop at one or two, and then the cunning, baffling disease would tell me, oh, you got this licked. Until I went and tried the experiment again, and I'd wake up the next morning with that same feeling of self-loathing and contempt, and oh my God, I did it again. How did that happen? My life is unmanageable because I'm powerless over alcohol. And Fred is taking step one here. Okay, let's carry on.
Okay, Karen, would you like to read? We're on page 42nd paragraph. Karen, I just clicked the button so you can unmute if you want. Do you want to? Okay, you want me to come back to you? Joe, can you read?
I got her.
Oh, thank you.
I can see.
Yep, no, you're good. So
Okay.
let him tell you, please.
Joe, alcoholic.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. We heard no more. I think we heard no more of Fred, or is it the next paragraph?
Next paragraph, let him tell you about it.
My apologies.
That's right.
Let him tell you about it. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and frankly, I did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. I rather appreciate ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, but I was confident it could not happen to me. After what I have learned, I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows, that I've been usually successful in licking my other personal problems, and that I would therefore be successful where you men failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident, and that would be only a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard.
Okay, beautiful, Joe. And so this whole paragraph is what? Ego. Write it in big letters, ego, right next to it, exclamation mark. I'm fundamentally unique. I'm not like the rest of you drunks. I'm smarter, you know? And that's what he's saying here. He was impressed by what they told him, but then I've circled, did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. That's ego, thinking I'm somehow special. I'm not like you drunks, right? And then he says, I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows. That's another yet. Keep doing it. You've been around this room long enough, you'll see many squares go dark. And it's not the case that people intend to die in here, but it happens with great regularity because this disease is fatal. If we don't get into the solution, we're the lucky ones. We're the ones in here trying to sort this out. We're the 10% that made it into the room when 90% of us are still out there drinking and using. And just look at the statistics. It's not a winning game. Okay, and then he says, here's the pomposity, the ego. I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems. So same with a lot of us. We wanted a certain job, we wanted a certain relationship, we wanted a certain this or that. And when we made our mind up, we went and got it. But then he says, I'm going to be successful where you men have failed. I felt I had every right to be self-confident. Ego. He's operating totally in self-will here. I'm not like the rest of you. I'm special. I'm fundamentally unique. And then it's summarized in that, circle it, highlight it, willpower. My willpower. We don't solve this problem on willpower. I have the will to not drink, but unless it's a we program, and that we includes a higher power as we go through these steps. Right now, we're just on step 1. We're just trying to admit that this is bigger than us. And guess what? There's absolutely no shame in that. It's a disease. We're not bad people. We're just unfortunate in that we don't process ethyl alcohol like other people. And so if we take it on board, it takes us. And as I said last week, there's no other disease that you get diagnosed with that your brain says, go out and do the very thing that's going to kill you. Right? I get diagnosed as diabetic. I'm not going on a sugar binge. If I was told to watch insulin, I'm not going to go and kill myself by taking too much or taking too little. It's the same with every other disease. But alcoholism, our brain is telling us we need the very thing that's going to kill us. Very strange indeed. Okay, and then every right to be self-confident, that's a delusion. So the bottom line is he has no spiritual answer. But he's starting to look at step 1 here. Can you guys see that? He's starting to connect the dots like, geez, maybe I don't have all the answers. Okay, let's carry on. We're on
Joe,
this frame of mind.
Am I still reading?
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
sorry, I
In
think
this frame of
my
mind,
microphone isn't working. So yeah, go ahead, Joe.
In this frame of mind, I went about my business, and for a time, all was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard work of a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell. There was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was at the end of a perfect day, not a cloud in the horizon.
So, okay, let's break this down a little bit further. Okay, he says in that on page 40 at the bottom, if I've not been making too hard a work of a simple matter. I mean, is that not a delusion again? And again, he's been in the sanitarium twice, and he's rehabbed himself a couple times, so he's got some sobriety again, and he's going, geez, you know, maybe I'm not alcoholic because I'm feeling pretty good again. And we see this all the times, often around 30 days, you know, when people start to feel physically a little bit better. And again, it's 60 days and 90 days. There's also a reason for that. One of the things that we've discovered from science is that we have a toxin dump about every 30 days when we first start getting clean. And so you can wake up itchy bitchy and twitchy and feel like you've actually got nowhere in the program and you're right back at square one because your system's having a dump of this sort of thing into your system. So that's just a little sideline how you can start to feel like you've got this, and or you'll hear people say, oh, you're on a pink cloud, and then you turn around and, oh, well, maybe I can just get away with craft beer. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so too hard a work of a simple matter. What did I put written in the margin there is minimalizing. I know I'm an alcoholic. And one thing about coming into AA is it ruined my drinking career. Once I became aware of what I belonged in here and I went back out over and over again, yeah, it never really was quite as enjoyable because I knew I shouldn't be doing it. But my brain minimalized it and said, oh, you know, just a few won't do, you know how it goes. Anyway, and then that whole paragraph is saying it was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. What a great lead into what happens next. Let's carry on.
Okay, let's see if I figured this out. Let's see. Who has, oh, Karen, would you like
Yeah.
to read?
Sure. Except that okay. Are we on page 41?
Page 41, I went to my hotel.
Okay, got it. Karen, alcoholic and addict. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. I ordered a cocktail and my meal. Then I ordered another cocktail. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. When I returned to the hotel, it struck me a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. I remembered having several more that night and plenty the next morning. I have a shadowy recollection of being in an airport bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi cab driver at the landing field instead of my wife. The driver escorted me about for several days. I wonder how much that cost. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. Then came the hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering.
So again, you notice at the beginning, the italic sentence there, highlight that. Okay, so this is the insanity of the thinking starting again, right? As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind. It always starts in my thinking. And sometimes I'm thinking about my next bender without even realizing it. Like, for example, I found airports really anxiety causing and a good place to drink because I'm stuck in the airport. There's bars everywhere and I could get away with it. So the thinking would start when I've already booked my ticket. And then it would be like I get to the airport, even if the thought hadn't crossed my mind for a long time, and I'm on autopilot and I'm going to do it. So here he's saying the italics, it starts in the thinking. That is what this is all about. And then the thought came to mind. This is impulsive, insane thinking. This is part of step one. I'm powerless. I'm powerless over this thinking. And then what happens? Look what he does. What is it? Unmanageability as a result of his drinking. He doesn't end up in an airport without his wife and being taken around by a taxi cab for God knows what he barely remembers because he's on a whim. It's a direct result of him having taken that first drink. And that is what is critical for us to do thoroughly in step one. Do you guys see that? Like, more people don't do a proper step one and then they relapse, and you go back to it and it's like, I never really surrendered to this. I never really accepted that this is not something optional for me. I never really admitted to myself I'm powerless over alcohol and drugs. I never did it. So I went back out for decades. I said it. I went into the room and told people I was an alcoholic and made pretty speeches, but I never really believed it myself. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, let's carry on because we want to wrap up this story of Fred.
Okay. Let's see, physical, where do we leave? Oh,
As soon as I regained.
yeah. Okay. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time I had not thought of the consequences at all. I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and place would come, I would drink again. Do you want me to stop there?
Carry on.
Okay. They said that though I did raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow.
So this is where we're going to end today, because this is step one brought home. Basically, again, if you go back to the beginning of that paragraph on 41, you'll see that it's highlighted again. Off guard. Okay, circle the words off guard. And I've written an arrow and it says, I have no defense against the first drink. None. No matter how much guard I tell myself I have, the second I take that first drink, the drink takes me. And I've written in the margin, strange mental twist. It's the unique thing about this disease. In my own voice, I hear the lie that tells me it's okay to do this again. Does that sound familiar to you? Do you find you're doing okay for a while, and then all of a sudden in your own voice, you get that little tap and you say, well, you could probably just go and have a glass of wine with your friends. Or you could probably just go to that club and have 1 or 2 cocktails. Or I could buy that bottle of wine and drink it by myself. I'll just have 1 glass tonight. Nice cold glass of wine. You know, the lie I tell myself is in my own voice. What is that? Powerlessness. Powerlessness and a delusion. I've also written in the bottom, stinking thinking. You'll hear that saying over and over again in these rooms. I got into the stinking thinking. And we're in the solution, as you're going to see. If you stick and stay with us, we're going to show you how to get out of the stinking thinking. So now we're at the top of 42. And then I underlined trivial reason for having a drink. What is that? A justification. Oh my God, I got a ticket. Oh my God, I got a bad test result. Oh my God, I didn't get the job. Oh my gosh, my husband's sleeping with so-and-so, or my wife is sleeping with so-and-so, or my children are being beastly to me, or I've been defrauded, or you name it. You know, if you had a life like mine, you'd drink too. We are all thinking we're fundamentally unique. What are we? Powerless. Each and every one of us, powerless. And then at the bottom there, I've highlighted and underlined this one in a different color. It's so important. I knew from that moment that I had a circle, 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 alcoholic mind. Okay, so here we go again. He's self-aware. You know, now he's accepting. Okay, yeah, maybe I'm like the rest of you. And then he says, this is critical. Because remember what the last paragraph said? It was self-will. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help me in those strange mental blank spots. Yeah, that sums it up. That's our friggin' disease. All this book knowledge I've got, all the smarts I've got up here about my disease, and my, you know, ever been told, oh, just pull your socks up, or, you know, you've got yourself through so many things, you can just, you know, you can do this just on self-will. They don't understand alcoholics, do they? And then the critical words in the third last sentence there, hopelessly defeated. Hopelessly defeated. Am I powerless? Is my life unmanageable? And that, ladies and gentlemen, nails step 1. So the question I have to ask myself is, have I done a thorough step 1? Or is there something still at the back of Jill's brain saying that she's fundamentally unique? And unlike you guys, I can go out there again and I'll be just fine. I, honest to God, hate it when people say, I think I've got 1 more drink in me. I think I've got 1 more party in me. What makes you think you know? Right? I'm terrified of going back out again because I don't think I'd survive it. But I'm not going to take the chance. And with that, I know I've gone a bit over time, but we go as long as we need to go in here. So Amy, back to you. Let's have some thoughts on what we've just shared, and we're going to leave her there tonight. We can stop.
Yeah, we kind of, we didn't follow our own rules. So I do want to make sure if anybody needs, oh, stop the recording. Thank you.